And I know we're going to start with one of your old teams, the Eagles, and Michael Vick. His hand is not broken. They say it's bruised. What do you think?
They say it's bruised, but when I'm looking at Michael Vick and the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm not one of those I told you so guys, but I told you so. Just because you sign a bunch of big names doesn't mean you're going straight to the playoffs. I had a feeling the chemistry wouldn't be there. Football has too many pieces, too many personalities to make 5 or 6 big-time free agent signings and thinking that you're going straight to the playoffs, especially in the NFC East. When you're talking about the Giants and you saw the Redskins and Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football, that slobber knocker, that division, it takes chemistry, it takes teamwork. It doesn't take a bunch of big names. And Michael Vick, though I respect what he does, he's one of my favorite players to watch. The way he plays the quarterback position only opens him up to injury. That's why I was a little bit nervous with that big signing, that big commitment they gave him, because he goes out there and he plays with everything like you should. But at the quarterback position, you have to be a little bit smarter and sometimes turn down the big hits.
Eagles are 1-2 in last place in the NFC East. We got 13 games to go. But Vick complained that the officials are letting players get away with things against him. They don't do it to other quarterbacks. Do you think he's being treated unfairly?
Definitely. First of all, I don't like any of the calls when I see all these wide receivers, these quarterbacks, these defenders getting penalized for hitting these guys and playing football. But it seems like Michael Vick's taking vicious shots. And if it was a different quarterback, if it was maybe the traditional drop back, statue type quarterback, they would call it. But for some reason, they're not calling it against Vick.
Everybody loves the Buffalo Bills. Nobody hates the Bills. I don't even think the AFC East opponents hate the Bills. 3-0 beat the Patriots. What do you think about the Bills?
First of all, I think you're absolutely right with your assessment. The Buffalo Bills, they're one of those teams that, everybody has their team that they root for. But if Buffalo Bills aren't playing your team, you're almost rooting for them. You're rooting for the underdog. They've been so bad for so long. You know the history with Buffalo, Marv Levy, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas. You want to see them get back to that prominence as long as they're not defeating your team. What they're doing now is just exciting. With Fred Jackson, he's a running back that I feel like was never given a chance to be the starter, be the guy, because they drafted Marshawn Lynch when Fred Jackson was producing for him, and he had to take a back seat. But now he's getting that chance to be the guy. Quarterback from Harvard, how can you not like that story? You know he's going to know exactly where every play should go. But when you think of an Ivy League quarterback, you wonder if he has the athleticism. He definitely has the athleticism. This is just a good story to beat the New England Patriots the way they did it after being down 21 points. It just shows the resilience that the Buffalo Bills have. The only question I have, is this just some dream month for them, or do you think they're going to continue this success and make it to the playoffs?
I think they're going to continue the success and make it to the playoffs. I don't think they'll win a division, but I think they'll win a wild card. We could see both the wild cards coming out of the AFC East. We all know in Houston where that quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, made his debut right here at Reliance Stadium, brought the Rams from behind, I think, 20 points in the fourth quarter to beat the Texans and help the Texans get the number 1 pick, Mario Williams, in that 2005 season. And speaking of quarterbacks, Tony Romo put on a courageous performance. They beat the Redskins. What do you think about where the Cowboys are?
You know what? There's some concern when you look at the team because of the injuries. When they get Miles Austin back, when they get all their guys healthy, you're going to see a pretty good team when you talk about the Dallas Cowboys. But the one thing that stood in my mind watching the Monday night game with the Cowboys versus the Washington Redskins was how tough Romo was. You saw the grimace in his face after he would throw the ball. He took some big hits from those defenders, from Arakpo and London Fletcher and a lot of those guys for the Washington Redskins. He would get up slow, but he just continued to lead his team. It wasn't a perfect game for him. He didn't have any touchdowns. He had an interception, but he just led his team. He fought, and I think all the guys just rallied around him, and that's why they were able to come away with a victory.
There's a team that's getting a little attention now after blowing a 21-3 lead against Buffalo. That's the Oakland Raiders. They come into Reliance Stadium after the Steelers. They just beat the Jets by 10. Now they got the Patriots. They could come to Houston after beating the Jets and Patriots. Are the Raiders legit?
It's hard. When you think of the Raiders, you just think of a bunch of athletes who will get it together for a couple of weeks, but they just can't consistently win. With the new coach, maybe he could change that culture, but Al Davis still has his thumbprint on that team. They're just one of those teams. Last year they won every division game, but they still didn't make the playoffs. They could beat any team at any given time, but can they consistently put it together? I don't know. They haven't answered that question for me just yet.
Darren McFadden and Michael Bush. That's quite a 1-2 punch. We're going to see it here right at Reliance Stadium. Now, there's a lot of things going on around the league. It's amazing. We watched Pittsburgh on Sunday night go to Indy, win by 3. They've got 9 of their 11 starters who are 30 or more. The offense is struggling, I believe 11 turnovers. So they're going to come into Reliance Stadium. It's not as good as they were last year and went to the Super Bowl. Is this team on the way down, or can they regroup and be as good as they have been?
You know what? It's cyclical. With all the teams, you know, you have bad teams like the Buffalo Bills, Detroit Lions. They're turning out to be pretty good teams. I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are on their way down. I don't think they're going to another Super Bowl in the next 5 years. I think they're going to have to regroup. They're going to have to change the nucleus of that team eventually. They have a lot of older players, but they're still making plays, so it's hard to say that those guys don't need to be there. It's hard to say that James Ferrier should be cut or Casey Hampton shouldn't be around, because those are still your playmakers, but they are 30-plus years old. The one thing that stands out is their offensive line just looks horrible. If they do need to go somewhere, if they are going to make it through to the playoffs and deep into the playoffs, they are going to have to get people to protect Ben Roethlisberger.
They had 3 starters hurt Sunday night in an offensive line that was mediocre to begin with.
Right.
Now, you mentioned Detroit. They've lost 7 consecutive games. Their offense, like Buffalo, is incredible. Matthew Stafford, as long as he stays healthy, people think they could actually compete with the Packers for the NFC North title. Do you believe that?
Oh, I definitely believe it. Though I think Houston Texans has the best Johnson receiver. I think Detroit has the second best Johnson. When you talk about Calvin Johnson or Megatron, whatever you want to call him, he's making amazing plays. Javid Best is making some amazing runs. You're seeing their skill possessions and the trenches produced. When you see that defensive line play, it's as fun to watch as watching the greatest show on turf, the offensive skill position, just the way they get after that quarterback. I really think Detroit, if Stafford can stay healthy, which he hasn't been able to do for an entire season in his entire career, if he can stay healthy for an entire season, this team is definitely going to the playoffs.
And for the first time, their number 1 pick, defensive tackle Nick Fairley, is going to play next to Ndamukong Suh. And if Fairley is as good as advertised, can you imagine what that twosome's going to be like?
Yeah, it's going to be, again, I already said, even without Fairley, it's fun to watch that defensive line, but I will warn Fairley and the people who support him, it's going to take time for him to get into football shape. He's been in a boot. I know he's been running sprints and working with a trainer, but there's nothing that simulates playing football with the pads on, with the lights on, and playing against an opponent that's really trying to get after you. I think it's going to take him about a month to really get into football shape and understand the speed of regular season.
And when he is healthy, he and Sue together be like that movie Nasty Boys.